The right to live. According to the Indian Constitution, the right to live means no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty. While on the one hand, the state executive respects human life, the judiciary, on the contrary, provides the state with the ultimate power over life, which allows the imposition of death sentence. The issue of capital punishment has recently been debated in the United Nations for total abolition. But there are a number of countries which still support capital punishment. In India, we are yet to take a positive decision. In this, we will be focusing the issue in terms of its position according to law versus human rights.
We agree that a real and abiding concern for the dignity of human life is required to be kept in mind by the courts while considering the confirmation of the sentence of death. But a cold-blooded, pre-planned, brutal murder without any provocation after committing rape on an innocent and defenseless girl of 18 years by the security guard certainly makes this a rarest of rare case which calls for no punishment other than the capital punishment. We accordingly confirm the sentence of death imposed upon the appellant for the offence under section 302 IPC.
যদি আমি করে থাকি তাহলে আমাকে ফাঁসি দাও, কোনো আমি ইয়ে করছি না, আমাকে প্রমাণ, আমি তো রাষ্ট্রপতিকেও লিখেছি যে লাই ডেটার সামনে আমাকে জেরা করা হোক, যদি আমি দোষী হই তাহলে আমি কোনো মার্সি করবো না, এই ধরনের জঘন্য কেসে আমি কোনো মার্সি চাইবো না।
এই যে কেসটাতে যেটা দেখা যাচ্ছে, এই যে কেসটাতে সেই বাড়ির লোকজন, পারেক পরিবার, আপনার কোম্পানির লোকজন, বিশেষ করে পুলিশ, কেন এরা শুধু আপনাকেই এরকম ভাবে আপনার বিরুদ্ধে এরা দাঁড়িয়ে পড়লো, আপনার কি মনে হয়?
আমি নাই তো, আমি তো সম্পূর্ণ নির্দোষ আছি। তো কোর্টে তো আমি বলেছি এবং উকিলকে ডেকে বলেছি, সকলে বলেছি, কিন্তু আমার উপরে চক্রান্ত হচ্ছে। তাহলে
in section 302 of the Indian Penal Code of our country, if a person is found to be guilty of an offence of murder, then there is a provisions of punishment in two ways. In general case, he is sent for life imprisonment, and in exceptional case, rarest of the rare case, according to the apex court of our country, death sentence is imposed. Therefore, it is really not correct to think or suggest that in any murder case, if a person is found guilty, he is immediately sent to the gallows. But in rarest of the rare cases only, the apex court as well as constitution of our country have provided that capital punishment is necessary.
In our country, death sentence should not be abolished for some more time. I am fully conscious of the fact that it is not effective in many cases, but at least in some cases it has some deterrent value. It has some element of deterrence in it. If that also is taken away, the way the law and order situation, the lawlessness is growing in the country and violence is spreading, I think there will be absolutely no hold barred at all.
Dhananjay Chatterjee was the security guard of Anand Apartments in Poddapukur in South Calcutta, where the deceased victim Hetal Parekh lived with her parents Nagardas and Yashmati Parekh along with brother Bhavesh. Hetal had previously complained to her mother about Dhananjay making passes at her. But it was only on 2nd March 1990 when Dhananjay asked Hetal to accompany him for a movie that Yashmati spoke to her husband about the matter.
সিনেমায় যাবা নাকি? কি যাবে?
এই মেয়েটি তখন স্কুলে যেত, যাতায়াত করতো, আপনি তখন দেখেছিলেন মেয়েটিকে, এবং পরেও যখন আপনি এলেন তখন আপনি মেয়েটিকে যাতায়াত করতে, স্কুলে যাতায়াত করতে দেখতেন। কোনোদিন আপনি কথা বলেছেন মেয়েটির সঙ্গে? না, কোনোদিন
ফ্ল্যাটবাড়ির সাথে কারোর সাথে কথা বলে না। ও হয়তো যদি কেউ আমাকে ডাকে যে লাইটের ব্যাপারটা একটু ঠিক করে দাও, যেন মেনটেন্যান্সের ব্যাপারটা আমাকে দেখতে হতো কেয়ারটেকার হিসাবে, মেনটেন্যান্সের ব্যাপারটা যখন দেখতাম তখন লাইট ফাইটের ব্যাপারে আমি নিচে সব ইয়ে করে দিতাম, জেনারেটর চালাতাম, পানির জন্য জলের জন্য ইয়ে চালা যেত মেশিন।
Hetal was a student of Welland Goldsmith School in central Calcutta. On Nagardas Parekh's complaint, Messrs Security and Investigating Bureau transferred Dhananjay to take charge as security guard of Paras apartments in North Calcutta. But defying orders, Dhananjay went back to work at Anand apartments as usual. On 5th March 1990, around 5 in the evening, Yashmati was away at the nearby Lakshminarayan temple. Nagardas Parekh and brother Bhavesh were at their office on Canning Street, Central Calcutta. Hetal was alone in the flat. Dhananjay, on the pretext of making a telephone call to his office, entered Parekh's flat, number 3A. When Yashmati returned home, she found her daughter Hetal raped and brutally killed. In the meantime, Dhananjay had disappeared.
এবং যে চার্জটা আপনার এগেইনস্টে দেওয়া হয়েছে যে রেপ এবং
সম্পূর্ণ
ফলস। আপনি খুব সিনেমা দেখতেন কি?
না, এমনিতে আমি সিনেমার ইয়েতে ভক্ত নেই। এমনিতে বাড়িতে যদি কেউ ইয়ে করে, তবে সেদিন আমি সিনেমা দেখেছিলাম। কিন্তু সেদিন আমি 2টার সময় ডিউটির পরে রাত্রিবেলায় আমার ভাইয়ের পথে আমি বাড়ি যাবো রাত্রিবেলাতে, সেইতে 4টের সময় আমি ইয়েতে চলে গেলাম সিনেমা দেখে, ওদের আমি ইয়েতে চলে গেছিলাম।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, আপনার বাড়িতে যখন আপনাকে ধরা হয় তখন আপনার ওখান থেকে একটা রিকো রিস্ট আছে এবং জামা এবং ট্রাউজার যেটা পাওয়া গিয়েছিল,
এই সম্পূর্ণ ফলস। ঘড়ি ফড়ি সব কিচ্ছু না। আমার জামা প্যান্ট, আমার জামা প্যান্ট যেটা আমার কোর্টে দেখাচ্ছে, সেই জামা প্যান্টটা আমার কলকাতায় দেখেনি। সেই জামা প্যান্টটা আমার শ্বশুরমশাই কালী পুজোর সময় দেওয়া হয়েছিল, তাতে সেটা সেলাই করে আমার বইয়ের বাক্সায় ছিল। যখন পুলিশ আমাকে নিয়ে আসছে তখন বলছে একটা জামা প্যান্ট দাও। জামা প্যান্টটা নিলাম, বলছে এটা পরবে, এটা পরে যাবে কলকাতা, কোর্টে ফোর্টে যখন যাবে এটা পরে যাবে, বাস। তারপরে জামা প্যান্টটা কোর্টে রিকভারি দেখাচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা ধরুন, তাহলে এই পারেখ, ওই গোটা অ্যাপার্টমেন্টের লোকজন, পুলিশ, আপনি যে কোম্পানিতে কাজ করতেন সেখানকার লোকজন সবাই কিন্তু একমাত্র বিরুদ্ধে যাচ্ছে আপনার। এটা কেন? আপনি কেন সবার টার্গেট হয়ে গেলেন?
সকলে তো বিরুদ্ধে যায়নি, সকলের বিরুদ্ধে পুলিশ ইয়ে করেছে। তাছাড়া তাদেরকে এখানে তো ধরেন আমাদের দশরথ মুর্মু, তাকে ডেকে এখন নেক্সট আপনি ইয়ে করেন, ওই লালবাজার থেকে লালবাজার থ্রুতে না এনে আপনি সাধারণভাবে ডেকে জিজ্ঞাসা করেন যে ধনঞ্জয় সেদিনে ছিল কি না। সে প্রত্যেক কোনো ছেলে যদি বলে, ও লালবাজার নিয়ে যাকে কোর্টের থেকে তুলবে তাকে তো ওরা তো মেরে সিধা করবে। তো একটা লোককে যদি টাকের টায়ারের মধ্যে ঢুকিয়ে যদি ইয়ে করা হয়, সে কতক্ষণ না বলবে আমি বলবো।
কিভাবে বলবে এটা? হঠাৎ এটা কি বুঝলাম না আপনি যেটা বললেন।
একটা লোককে, সাক্ষীদেরকে যদি ধরেন টাকের টায়ার টিউটা খুলে টায়ারের মধ্যে তাকে ঢুকিয়ে দিল, ঢুকিয়ে দেওয়ার পরে ওই বারান্দার মধ্যে 3 পাক খাওয়ালো, তখন কি বলছে?
এভাবে কি লালবাজারে করেছে?
লালবাজার তো প্রত্যেককে এখনো তো করছে। সাক্ষী, এমন কোনো সাক্ষী নেই যে লালবাজার ইয়ে করে না, না করলে তার খানদানকে বরবাদ করে দেবে।
আপনার বাড়িতে কে কে আছেন? মানে বাবা, মা, এরকম?
বাবা আছেন, মা আছেন, দাদা আছেন, বৌদি আছেন, দিদি আছেন, আমার ওয়াইফ আছেন, তারপরে আপনার আমার ভাই, আমার মেজো 3টে বোন।
আচ্ছা,
আমার ছোট।
আপনার বিয়ে হয়েছিল কবে?
1989, 27 ফেব্রুয়ারি।
আপনি তারপরে কবে কলকাতায় চলে আসেন?
মার্চের 20-25 তারিখ হবে, 20-25 নাগাদ।
যে 15 দিন আপনি স্ত্রীর সঙ্গে ছিলেন, সেই 15 দিনে কিভাবে আপনার স্ত্রীর সঙ্গে সম্পর্কটা তৈরি হলো?
স্বামী স্ত্রীর সম্পর্কে যেটা হয়
না সেটা আপনার অপরিচিত।
ভালোবাসা না, সে অপরিচিত হলো এটা স্বামী স্ত্রীর সম্পর্ক, তাকে মানে ইয়ে করে নেওয়া, নিজের করে নেওয়া, সেটা তো দরকার না।
সেটা কিভাবে মানে আপনি 15 দিনের মধ্যে করতে পেরেছিলেন আপনি মনে করেন?
হ্যাঁ, স্ত্রীকে তো ফুলসজ্জার রাতেই তাকে যেটা আমাদের ইয়ে হয় আর কি, সেদিনে তো তাকে অলরেডি ইয়ে করা হয় না, সেদিনে তাকে সবকিছু আমার ভবিষ্যৎ আমি যেটা চিন্তা ভাবনা করেছিলাম সেটাই আর কি তাকে জানিয়ে দেওয়া হয়েছিল।
বেশ, তারপর আর আপনার স্ত্রী জানতেন যে আপনি কলকাতায় চাকরি করবেন, সেটা জানতেন? মানে আপনি তারপরে
আমি চাকরি করতাম বা করব, আমি এটা সবাই জানে যে চাকরি করব, এবং আমি চান্স নিয়েছিলাম যে মিলিটারি কোনো ডিপার্টমেন্টে, আমার হবি ছিল যে মিলিটারি আর পুলিশ, এই দুটো।
মিলিটারি বা পুলিশ আপনি ঢুকতে চাইলেন?
মিলিটারিতে আমার ইয়ে ছিল,
ছোটবেলা থেকে
ইচ্ছে। আমাকে বাবা যেতে দিল না ছোটবেলা, একবার মিলিটারি আমাদের ওখানে ট্রেনিং এসেছিল, বাবা আমাকে যেতে দিলেন না, যে না মিলিটারিতে যেতে হবে না।
বেশ,
তাই আমি বললাম, তারপরে যখন সিআরপি আবার লোক নিতে শুরু করেছিল, তখন আমি আস্তে আস্তে যখন চাকরি কোথাও পাচ্ছি না, তখন লাইন দিতে গেছিলাম। তো এখন বর্তমানে বেকিংয়ের যুগ হয়ে গেছে, যে যার পিছনে টাকা আছে, যার মামা আছে, সেই চাকরি পাবে।
So far as Dhananjay's case is concerned, I have a definite feeling that having kept him in jail for 14 years after conviction, it was not fair to award him the extreme penalty of death. When you live in a solitary confinement for 14 years, it's an extreme penalty by itself. Every day when you live under the fear of constant fear of death, you are dying a slow death. And after 14 years he must have been a half dead man before he was picked up to be executed. It was regarding the grant of clemency to him, and my view was that the man, having spent 14 years under the continuous fear of death, he must be half dead and therefore should not be executed. Any further penalty would not promote justice.
ধনঞ্জয়, এই যে ধরুন পুরোহিতগিরি না করে এই যে কলকাতায় চলে গেল চাকরি বাকরি করার জন্য, বাড়িতে টাকা পয়সা পাঠাতো?
হ্যাঁ, বাড়িতে 200-300 করে টাকা দিত,
তাতে তখন আপনাদের চলে যেত?
এবং বড় ছেলেটাও 150, 200, 250, 300 টাকা দিত, চলে যেত। আমার ধান চাল প্রচুর থাকতো, বা আমার মুনিশ খরচা সব হতো। আমার আরেকটা লাঙ্গল ছিল, সেই জমি জায়গা সব বিক্রি হয়ে গেছে, আমারও শরীরে তাগজ ছিল, তখন এরকম থাকে না আমার অভাব।
তা এই যে ঘটনাটা যে ঘটে গেল,
হ্যাঁ,
এই ঘটনাটার ফলে কি কি ক্ষতি হলো আপনার?
এই ঘটনার ফলে আমার বহু 8-9 বিঘা জায়গা আমার চলে গেছে।
কিভাবে গেল?
ওই মামলার দায় বিক্রি।
কত জমি ছিল আপনার?
জমি আমার প্রায় বিঘা 32 জায়গা ছিল।
তা জমি মানে কোর্ট কাছারি করতে গিয়ে
সব চলে গেল। 7 বিঘা 7.5 বিঘা জায়গা গেছে। 2 বইয়ের যে সোনা ছিল সেগুলো গেছে, তাও আমি উপযুক্ত উকিল দিতে পারি নাই, ভালো উকিল দিতে পারি নাই, এবং সেখানে যাই লড়তে পারি নাই। ভয়াবহ আসতে লাগলো, এবং সেখানে জজ কোর্টে আমি গেলাম। জজ কোর্টে আমি উকিলকে আমি পয়েন্ট বলতে যাচ্ছি, তখন তাদের সব লোক, আমি তাদের তো চিনি না, তারা বলছে আয় বেটা, এমনি জোরে আয় বেটা, দাঁড়াও, এটা বাঁকুড়ে নয়, বেশি বাড়াবাড়ি করবে তোমাকে স্ট্যাপ করে দেবো, তুলে নিয়ে যায়। ভয়ে আর আমি টাকা দিয়েছি, যথাযথ উকিলও করতে পারি নাই, কিছুই নাই। কী করেছে না করেছে আমি আজ যেতে পারি নাই ভয়ে। আমি তো পাড়াগাঁয়ের লোক।
আপনি কি মনে করেন যে আপনার ছেলে এই ঘটনাটা ঘটিয়েছে?
না, আমার এতটুকু ধারণা হয় নাই। আমার বংশে আপনি থানায় রেকর্ড দেখুন, আমার প্রায় আজ অন্তত আমার বাপ ঠাকুরদাদার আমলের থেকে আমার থানায় ব্যাড রেকর্ড নাই, এবং আমি সেরকম নিষ্ঠা, সেই রকম ব্রাহ্মণ আমি লই। আমার ছেলে সেরকম করতে পারে না, এটা সম্পূর্ণ সাজসিক। টাকা থাকলে গরিব শোষণ করতে বড় লোকে যথেষ্ট পারে, বড় লোকেরই আইন, যার জন্য আমি বড় লোককে আমি উকিল দিতে পারি না, যথাসময় আমি পয়সা জোটাতে পারি না। পাকা ধানের জমি আমাকে বেশি দিতে হয়েছে, ছেলের ফাঁসি, কী করবো, উপায় নেই। তখন পাকা ধান আছে খেতে, আমাকে বিচি দিতে হয়েছে। লকড়ায় চকড়ায় চলুন, জায়গা আমি দেখাবো, প্রমাণ, চলুন আমি প্রমাণ দেখাবো আমার জায়গা। কিন্তু আমি সেই জায়গাকে গেলে ফিট হচ্ছি, সদা সর্বদা মুহুর্মুহু আমার হাঁপ আসছে। এইসব মেয়ে ছেলে আমি উদ্ধার করবো কী করে? মেয়ে ছেলে বিয়ার লেগে আমার 30,000 টাকা ছিল, সে আমার শেষ হয়ে গেল। 14 ভরি সোনা ছিল, সে শেষ হয়ে গেল। আজ চাষের ধান আমার যা ছিল সব শেষ হয়েছে। আমি অধ্যবক্ষ ধনের গুণ, কী করবো? কপাল, বড় লোক আমি, ওকে পারি না, আইনি টাকা পয়সা আমি কুলাতে পারি না। যখন ফাঁসির অর্ডার হচ্ছে, তখন ব্যারিস্টারে বলছে এই টাকা আনতে হবে, তখন আমার টাকা পয়সা নেই। লকড়ায় চকড়ায় জায়গা বিছে ভয়ে তাও যেতে পারছি না, উপযুক্ত উকিল দিতে পারি না, কী করে আমি মামলা চালাবো?
Well, I have been always opposed to death penalty, and I have also written extensively on it. And frankly, if you look at our traditions and the views of various people, for example, Gandhiji was against death penalty. Jayaprakash said he doesn't believe in it. Ambedkar Sahib said the best thing is to abolish it. The present Human Rights Commissioner is against it. President of Chile is against it. There are more than 133 countries which have already abolished it. And the UN has been passing resolution regularly for it. And the problem is that I think there's a mistaken notion that death penalty acts as a deterrent to murders. Now, you know, it's interesting that in 1980, the Supreme Court, in order to soften the blow of the death sentence, came out with a proposition saying that it should be in the rarest of rare case. Death penalty should be given in the rarest of rare case. That is, you know, put as forth an argument by those who are against this to say, well, it is in the rarest of rare case. But you know, it's interesting that prior to 80, say in 1970 to 80, there were 37% of the cases which went to the Supreme Court in which death penalty was given. And in 90, when the rarest of rare case clause came, in 80 to 90 it was 40%. And similarly in the High Court, prior to 80 decade, there was 65%. And subsequently it increased to 65%, and earlier it was 59%. So that the principle of rarest of rare case in point of fact does not work. And it's curious, without of course naming it, that some of the judges in the Supreme Court who upheld the death sentence were those who were convinced abolitionists. They were convinced abolitionists. They had written against it, but during the case, because it had not been abolished, they willingly accepted to give death sentence.
আচ্ছা, ধরুন যদি এমন হয় আর কি, ধরুন ধনঞ্জয় ঘটনাটা ঘটিয়েছে, ধরা যাক,
বলুন,
হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা, এইরকম যদি অপরাধ কেউ করে তাহলে তার শাস্তি কি হওয়া উচিত বলে অন্তত আপনি মনে করেন?
এরকম অপরাধ আমার বংশে হয় বলে
না না, আমি বলছি যে কেউ যদি করে এরকম অপরাধ, তাহলে তার কি শাস্তি হওয়া উচিত?
দেখুন স্যার, ওটা আমি সাধারণ মানুষে কি বলবো, আমার মনে, আমি তো বাবা, আমি কি বলতে পারি আপনাদের কাছে? তাহলে কি তার প্রাণদণ্ড হতে পারে? এটা কি সংবিধানে বলে? একটা মানুষ সে যদি ভুল ত্রুটি যদি করেই থাকে, তাহলে কি তার প্রাণদণ্ড হতে পারে? স্যার,
প্রাণদণ্ড হওয়া উচিত নয় বলে আপনি অন্তত মনে করেন?
হ্যাঁ।
আর ধরুন যদি এই ক্ষেত্রে ধনঞ্জয়ের প্রাণদণ্ড হয়েই যায়,
বলুন,
হ্যাঁ, তাহলে তখন আপনার রিয়াকশনটা কিরকম হয়?
তখন স্যার আমি হয়তো মারাই যাব। আমার তো স্যার, আমি তো ধারণা করছি সত্য, আমি সত্যই ধারণা করছি যে আমার বংশ এটা হতে পারে নাই। আমি সত্যমেব জয়তু, আমি সত্যকেই প্রতিজ্ঞা করে আছি যে এটা হতে পারে নাই, অনুষ্ঠিত হবে না, যেহেতু আমি নিষ্ঠাবান ব্রাহ্মণ, আমার বংশ এটা হতে পারে না।
আপনি বিশ্বাস করেন এখনো যে রাষ্ট্রপতি?
হ্যাঁ, রাষ্ট্রপতি, আমি এখনো বিশ্বাস করি যে রাষ্ট্রপতি এটা করতে পারে না, কারণ ধর্মই বলবান।
In India, if you abolish capital punishment, if you abolish hanging, I'm sure that the ratio of criminal acts will rise.
Well, you know, if you think of justice that way, it would be just if we could flaunt figures to show that because of capital punishment, certain crimes have declined. There is no conclusive proof that crimes have declined due to capital punishment.
The cruelties on women, that is now in increase. There is a tendency. A woman, an innocent girl, is abducted, raped, and then thereafter killed. Do you think a gang rape is also there? And thereafter she is brutally killed. Do you think that those criminals should be shown any mercy? I don't think so.
After all, Dhananjay Chatterjee didn't have any past criminal record. When he suddenly becomes a criminal like that, I think he should. People like them should always be given a second chance.
Okay.
A lot of people might be annoyed about my saying this, but I do think he should have been given a second chance. Though, I mean, rape is something so hateful, especially when you look at it from a woman's point of view. I mean, it's so macabre, psychologically it's so macabre, but even then.
The state is not taking the life. The state is administrating justice.
When you consider the basic issue in capital punishment, it is whether the state has the right to take away life of any of its citizens, even if that citizen commits a crime. I think that it is dangerous to give the state that right.
And a person who commits rape is a person who commits a worse offense than murder. But then you see, the point is, can you take away life? You cannot create it. We cannot, the state or any human being, as far as possible, I know, have not been able to create life. So what you cannot create, can you really take away?
But to see that only in the rarest of the rare case, a man must be punished with a capital punishment, because every right implies duties. When a man has a right to live, he has a duty to see that his act does not in any manner take away the right of living of another in the society.
আমাদের অবস্থা কিছু না, এখন আমার পেটে ভাত যায়, এইবারে এই চাল আনিছি, এই চাল এবারে হবে সিদ্ধ হবে, তারপরে আমরা খাবো। দেখছেন আমার অবস্থা, কিচ্ছু নাই আমার। না না, আপনাদের ভয়ের কোনো প্রশ্ন নাই, কিচ্ছু ভয় নাই আপনাদের, কিচ্ছু ভয় নাই আপনাদের, কোনো ভয় নাই। আপনারা আমার দেবতা, আপনাদিকে আমরা মনে করেছিলাম, আমার ভয় হয়েছিল, কিন্তু না, আমি ভয় করছি না। আপনাদের নিষ্কাশভাবে বলছি, আপনাদের ভয়ের কোনো কারণ নেই। এটা ফিট দেখুন, আপনারা একটু ব্যবস্থা করুন আমার, যাতে করে আমি সামাজিকতা এই মেয়েগুলো উদ্ধার করে আমি যেমন ইহ জগতের থেকে যেতে পাই, আর যাতে করে ছেলেটি আমি দেখতে পাই। আমি অসৎ ব্রাহ্মণ লই, আপনি যার আমার রেকর্ড দেখুন, থানাতে আপনি আমার রেকর্ড দেখুন, এবং আশেপাশে এমএলএ প্রধান পঞ্চায়েতের কাছে আমার রেকর্ড দেখুন। আমি কোনো খারাপ কাজ করি নাই, বা আমার বংশমর্যাদায় কোনো খারাপ কাজ নাই।
Whenever we have tried to tinker with those old statutes, we have created problems. The Indian Penal Code is of the year 1860. And if you take my words, this probably covers every possible offense that one can conceive of. Now, what we have done, we have created some new type of offences under different statutes, but they are already covered by the Indian Penal Code. Maybe that's, for example, the terrorist laws. In a sense, they're in the Indian Penal Code, waging war against the country. What we have done, we have enlarged the scope of those offences, and we have made the sentences more rigorous.
Now, when you mention about Kasab and Jihadis, the fact is, I don't know whether you can call them only war criminals merely because they came from some other country, because the people whose lives he affected were ordinary people like you and me. And there is a process of law, and there is punishment for that if indeed he is guilty as the court has found him. But even in that case, I am opposed to the capital punishment, because the Republic of India does not have to stoop to this kind of retribution, because if he is to be hanged, and when he is to be hanged, he is not a Kasab shooting around. He is a man with his hands tied behind him, with nobody around him, just awaiting his death. So there is something inherently spineless about the capital punishment, which no self-respecting nation should adopt.
These are days of suicide bombers. People come to kill themselves after killing as many people as possible. You have seen the incidents in Bombay, what happened 26/11/2008. They have not come to hit and run. They have come to die, but after causing as much damage as possible. This is the new type of violence which we are witnessing. Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by a suicide bomber. And there are a number of people happening, this kind of thing is happening in Iraq, everywhere it is happening. It's a new culture which is growing. People become desperate, they are motivated, indoctrinated, and then they come here to die and they do this kind of thing. For them, your death sentence means nothing. Already they have come prepared to die. So your death sentence will have no deterrent value at all there. Death sentence was the normal rule, and if it is not to be given, reasons were to be given. Later on, law has been amended by the legislature to say death is an exception, life sentence is the normal rule for those crimes for which death sentence is prescribed. And if you are giving death sentence, you must give reasons why you are giving death sentence. So law itself has undergone a change. I remember one case which I happened to deal with. Some Naxalites went to a person who was dealing in timber in Andhra Pradesh as disguised as customers, prospective purchasers of timber. And when that man treated them as guests and then prospective business people, he went inside to arrange for tea, etc. for them. As soon as he turned his back inside, they stabbed him in his house and killed him. Premeditated, cold-blooded, deliberate murder. They were apprehended, convicted, death sentence was awarded. When it came to the High Court, Andhra Pradesh High Court, a single judge, he had a little different view about these people. He said these are not ordinary criminals. These are persons who pursue an ideology, who believe in bringing about social transformation through this kind of eliminating the upper classes, the well-to-do people, affluent people, whom they perceive as bloodsuckers, who exploit the poor people. Long after Lord Macaulay, when the Constitution of India was framed, why in the Constitution death penalty is mentioned? When the power to pardon, etc. is given to the President and Governor, which is the mercy power, their death penalty also is mentioned there. So therefore, the Constitution makers also believed in 1950 that death penalty should be there on statute book. Now the question, in the 60 years, have we transformed our society in such a way, have we imparted value-based education to people that brutality is less now and there is more and more enlightenment among these sections of the people? On the contrary, my reading is, today, more and more educated people are indulging in heinous crimes, which did not happen in the earlier days. Situation was far better when the British left India than what it is today under self-governance. Today, human life has no value to many people. Look at the number of children kidnapped and killed for ransom. Look at the dacoities, daylight robberies, bank robberies, and whatnot. In this state of affairs, if this has got a deterrent value even for a small fraction of the criminals, I would like it to be on the statute book in the interest of the society. Otherwise, I am all for reformation, but our jail system does not allow reformation. Our criminal law system, the way we are administering, does not allow reformation. What happens? The moment an offence is committed, somebody or other picked up and put behind the bars. And very often it happens, if he has political connections, etc., then the right man is not put in the behind bars. Some people are apprehended, put behind as accused, later on they are all let off as there is no evidence. So therefore, the misuse of criminal law in the country is so much. I am sorry to say, if a politician is interested, he can get implicated his opponents into as the criminals. This is happening every day. I come across cases in my professional life. And he can protect, shield his own supporters who indulge in crime. Criminal law machinery is being used to target opponents. A very strange situation. So therefore, our system is not perfect. And then slow motion justice is another factor, which ultimately, even if it is on paper death penalty, how many cases death penalty is awarded? So therefore, there is nothing to seriously worry about death penalty so far as I see it. It has some deterrence value, yes. I feel it has some deterrence value. So long as that deterrence value is there, even if 5% of the potential criminals, murderers, feel somewhat restrained in committing murder because of the death sentence, I think that value we should retain in the present circumstances till we improve the societies, the morals of the people, common man, and bring down the crime rate and promote respect for fellow human life and see that crime is prevented. I know Justice Krishna, for instance, is a staunch opponent. He says, let there be death sentence on death sentence.
I'll give you a classic example of dowry death cases. Though they are there in a different form, but not under the nomenclature of dowry death. So they have been introduced. To make them more rigorous, we have also made changes in the Code of Criminal Procedure, in the Indian Evidence Act. Now, a classic example of the change in shift of the ideologies is relatable to death penalties. There is an ongoing discussion always whether death penalties should be there or not. Under the 1898 Code, for a murder, death sentence was the rule and life sentence was the exception. And if a trial judge wanted to give a life sentence instead of the rule, that is the death sentence, he had to indicate special reasons for that. Now the shift came in 1955 when the Code of Criminal Procedure was amended and their life sentence was made the rule and the death sentence was made the exception. It was felt that law should be not retributive, it should be reformative and deterrent. That's the exact language used in some cases. You see, then the matter came to the Supreme Court in a couple of very important cases, Bachchan Singh and Machi Singh, where the issue was what should be the type of cases where death sentences have to be given. Now, the Supreme Court coined a phrase, rarest of rare cases, death sentences are to be given, the capital punishment. Now, they laid down some parameters. For example, a helpless woman, an innocent child, an infirm person, old disabled persons, they are killed. But the golden thread which was running through all the cases where death sentences was given was the offense was diabolic in its conception and cruel in its execution. Girls of 5 years, 6 years, 7 years raped and murdered. And in one case, 2 girls were taken, raped and killed. Now the question was, there should be a proportionality between the nature of the crime and the punishment that is awarded. If the accused has become a nuisance to the society, and when the collective conscience of the society is actually outraged to an extent that this man doesn't deserve to live any further, that only death cases are to be given. That death sentence is constitutionally and statutorily permissible. There is a need to protect the witness.
When you go through many of the laws we have in the country, we feel that they need to be reformed, modified and restructured according to the present circumstances, also present and future aspirations of the people. Laws are not made for the past, laws are made for the present, and not only for the present, it is also made for the future. A law like this Indian Penal Code, you remember 155 years back, Lord Macaulay has done that. You know, what was there in about 155 years back, you know, cannot hold good in all respect, even as on today. But at the same time, that has been tested by various judgments of the High Court. The people has gone through, you know, it has found the test of the time. Everything has happened, but at the same time, we can't say that this is the only ideal, and we should not look beyond this. Not that capital punishment is absolute, is given in on absolute terms, particularly after section 299, which the law governing the human body. The number of provisions are there. That doesn't mean, you know, that the capital punishment is straight away given, and you have all seen that very rarely capital punishment is given. In the rarest of the rare cases, capital punishment is given. Now, even the interpretation from the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, is that it should be given the rarest of the rare occasions. So, this has, I must say that, you know, from what it originated and what it has gone through, and as on today, it is so much crystallized that, you know, generally it is not encouraged, but in the rarest of the cases, it can be considered.
I am opposed to the capital punishment, and the reasons for that are fairly obvious. There are, you know, India has this answer saying that we hang very few people. We are almost abolitionist. Parliament has considered it and was of the view in the 60s, I think, that perhaps the time had not come yet for India to abolish capital punishment. In the Supreme Court, a fairly weighty minority of 2 held that capital punishment is completely unacceptable to a republican and democratic polity based on the rule of law. It was abhorrent. But then the slender majority of 3-2 held that there was perhaps still some purpose to hanging. Now, this purpose eludes us because capital punishment is only given in extremely serious crimes, murder, and of course the Supreme Court has toted up circumstances, mitigating circumstances, aggravating circumstances, rarest of rare. We have in some sense made progress, but I'll come to that in a bit. But the psychology, this assumption that capital punishment is going to serve some greater purpose of justice is, in my view, completely absurd. For instance, you look at many of these Fidain attacks. They don't care what's going to happen to them. They're willing to blow themselves to bits. So what purpose is capital punishment going to serve when the person motivated to commit a crime is doing out of some overwhelming urge or is doing it independently of the consequences? 1. 2, the psychology of a person committing a crime is fundamentally that he hopes to evade the consequences. He does it assuming that somehow he will escape. So at that point of time, he is not calculating whether if caught he's going to get life or he's going to get death. He is doing it in the hope and in the swagger that he will not get caught at all. So capital punishment is no deterrent that has been established. In fact, in the state of Texas in the United States, which hangs the most number of people, the crime rate is among the highest. So there has been no correspondence between the prevalence of capital punishment or its frequency and the reduction of serious crime. Let's assume that Dhananjay Chatterjee was guilty as hell. Even then, is having capital punishment on the statute book justified? That is how I would approach the issue of capital punishment. Now, as far as you see, the state, giving the state the privilege to take life is sort of assumed to be, as I just said, in the interest of justice. I think this logic should be seriously probed. Capital punishment is not merely words in a statute book. It envisages a whole system geared to coldly taking life of a person who at that point of time is defenseless. You know, giving a person his last meal, the last meeting with the family, a hangman who comes and weighs the individual when he's alive, and then, you know, practices with a sack. The entire cold process of executing an individual as punishment dehumanizes the state. Somewhere in the public mind, it also justifies other forms of state killing. People assume that the state has the privilege to take life. If the state is taking life, it is doing so in public interest. So there are reasons, overwhelming reasons, why the state ought not to justify a legal killing in this fashion of a defenseless person. And who are you punishing? You're not just punishing the man who's being killed. It's the family. Just imagine children having a last-minute meeting with the parent, with the father or whoever, coming away knowing that there's going to be no further meeting. You know, a death which you so clearly anticipate at a given point of time, 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Who is it punishing for the rest of their life? It's the family which is going to be punished.
Nobody has the right to take away anybody else's life. That is fundamental. Now, there are always exceptions to every fundamental rule. Who is answerable to those 13 years and for the misery he went through for those 13 years? Is this not a dual sentence then? Are we not sentencing twice?
Rape and murder again. I will say that it will depend upon the circumstances. Like a young 13, 14 years girl who was not capable of defending herself, and then somebody without her knowledge barged into her house and then commit murder and commit rape and murder, then it's also a serious matter. Again, then his background, situation, everything has to be seen. You straight away I can't say rape and murder has to be death. But suppose he was indulging in this activity, 1, 2, 3 cases, then definitely. But rape and murder is really a serious matter. So ये मेरा एक उसमें critical ये है कि if you have awarded him a death sentence, law ये होना चाहिए within 1 year, चाहे उसकी mercy petition है कुछ है, it should be executed.
You know, personally, I think we need to differentiate the crime now. It's very important for us to see how and in which circumstances a life is taken. So what I'm really trying to say, when you classify a crime which is done on the spot, where there is no thinking going behind it, it's a reaction, immediate reaction, and a crime which is planned. The murderer has done 5 murders, and every murder was planned and committed in a span of 2 to 3 months. So he would go in, murder, and then start planning his next. And in a situation like this, when I also look at the legal background which is laid down by the courts in India, where they say only the rarest of the rare should be sent to the gallows, I personally think there is a lot more study to be done in this. You cannot let somebody commit crime planned precisely, month after month, 5 murders, and then not put him to the gallows. The state also does not have a right to take life. Now, this is a very important aspect of the whole situation. If the state can't take, an individual cannot be allowed to take, and he needs to be punished for it. And these are the kind of people, and the reason why capital punishment is done is that he is not fit to be in a civil society. He is not fit to be in a democratic society. I am very confused as a lawyer, as a parent who suffered this. Our lawyers did argue that there cannot be a better situation of rarest of rare cases. Here he goes, kills a 10-year-old child, kills a maid. 1 month before he is killed another maid. Another month later he kills one. Then he kills another one about 2 months later. If this is not rarest of rare, it's not the method of killing. It's not that you have blood spilled on the walls when you kill. It's the fact is that you are killing. So here is a mind that is getting trained or is trained to kill. That is the rarest of rare. You become a killing machine. This boy I am talking of was a killing machine. If he has to go to the gallows, the definition of rarest of rare fails. I mean, I would, it's the law of the country, is the apex court which says that, but with all respect, I think there is much more work to be done on that. So they need to understand this rarest of rare definition has to be precise. The current situation is a sad story. I think it's defeating the judicial system. You cannot have a death penalty awarded, mercy petition pending for so many years. It makes no sense because his remedies are over. The president or whoever has to go through the file. I was being faced with this situation when a family goes through such a trauma, and I being a lawyer, there was a lot of expectations from the family from me in the sense that I could hasten the judicial process, or after having come to know and the recoveries being made on the person of this murderer, they thought that I should be able to kind of speeden up the whole situation, and the decision should be made at the earliest, and why should the court take everybody else through that trauma and the other witnesses also when the police has actually made recovery. Say my wife wanted that the fact that we know that he has done it, why should he not be pinned down immediately? And my reaction as a lawyer was, no, we need to go through this every day in the courts, and we need to see that there is enough evidence against him before we can say that he is the person who has done it.
The law of death penalty is more than a century old. The Constitution dates to 1949. So there is a contradiction, and the court is considering the constitutionality of death penalty itself. You know, one is never sure whether our system of justice can ever be perfect, because the people who administer the system are themselves imperfect. The procedural laws are so uncertain based on the evidence that the police can command in any given situation. And therefore there is a possibility, however small that be, of innocent people being sent to the gallows. I think that possibility, even if it is small, should be sufficient warrant to argue against death penalty. Furthermore, it is notorious that our legal system is so much dilatory and delayed that to ask a person to wait for his day in the gallows for years together is inhuman.
Even though the capital punishment was given by the original court, that means the Sessions Court, it will undergo many appeals. It will go to the High Court, then it comes to the Supreme Court. Again thereafter there is a provision for mercy petition. Mercy petition also again takes a lot of time. That reflects that, either in the judiciary or in the executive, that kind of a compassion is still there. Should we give a capital punishment? Even after judicial process has been completed, the President of India or before President of India puts her approval or disapproval or provides a decision on the mercy petition, it is circulated among the state government of India, it is processed, ultimately it goes to the President of India. That demonstrates the fact that either the executive or the judiciary, even the highest body of the executive, not that they are willing to the punish a fellow. That means somewhere you must understand that there is always a compassion which overrides the provisions of the law or the punishment which is rendered by the judiciary.